I was sitting at my mother's dining table, eating the last meal she would ever cook for me in that house, when she smiled and told me it was time for me to go. She had no idea I had been the owner of the house she was asking me to leave since before I turned 18. Let me take you back to the September afternoon that changed everything. My name is Simone Archer. I am 37 years old. I work as a senior paralegal at Morrison and Webb Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I have spent 9 years doing the kind of work that most people do not know exists until they need it. Title searches, deed verification, estate records, chain of ownership going back 40, 60, 80 years. I find things. I trace things. I pull threads in property databases until the whole picture comes loose. I drive a 12-year-old Subaru. I rent an apartment 12 minutes from the office. My refrigerator has a magnet from a conference I attended in Raleigh 4 years ago that says, "Documentation is the difference between a story and a case." I bought it because I thought it was about my job. I still call my mother every Sunday. I still drive out to Birchwood Drive when she asks me to come for dinner. I still call it home, the way people call a place home long after they have stopped living there, the way the word becomes a habit more than a description. My mother's name is Gloria. She has lived at 1147 Birchwood Drive for as long as I can remember. She cooks the best ribs in Guilford County, and she knows it. She irons her church dresses on Saturday night. She is generous with her food and her opinions and very little else. She has a smile that fills a room, and I have spent 37 years trying to earn the version of it she saves for other people. My grandfather built that house, Earl Thomas Archer. He built it in 1971 with his own hands, plank by plank, before the neighborhood had a name. I know this because he told me. Earl was not a man who talked much, but when he did talk, it was about things that lasted. Good wood, good foundations, people you could trust with something that mattered. Earl died in October of 2004. I was 17 years old. I am telling you these things so you understand what I found that Tuesday afternoon in September. I am telling you so that when I set that piece of paper on my mother's dining table, you will understand exactly what it cost to get there. The title search was for a client whose last name was Harrington, a property off Summit Avenue. Straightforward. Nothing unusual. I was running the deed chain through the Guilford County property database the way I have run thousands of deed chains, clicking through ownership records the way other people scroll through their phones. I was not looking for anything. The search returned 11 results on Summit Avenue. I was checking the third one when my cursor moved wrong. I clicked the wrong street. Birchwood Drive came up instead. My fingers did not move for a moment. There were 6 properties on Birchwood Drive in the database. I scrolled down without meaning to, and then the 5th result loaded, and I read the address the way you read something in a dream, the way words look familiar and wrong at the same time, because you are certain they cannot mean what they appear to mean. 1147 Birchwood Drive. Owner of record, Simone Marie Archer. Date of transfer, October 14th, 2004. Grantor, Earl Thomas Archer. I clicked into the deed. My screen filled with scanned documents, old and yellowed at the edges, the way paper gets when it has been filed in a courthouse basement for 20 years. Earl's signature was at the bottom of page 2, the same signature I had seen on birthday cards and report cards, and one handwritten grocery list that my grandmother kept framed in the kitchen until she passed. Large and deliberate, the way people sign things when signing meant something. Below his signature, a notary stamp. Below the notary stamp, a recorded filing date. 1 week before Earl died, I sat back in my chair. I pulled up the chain of ownership. Every transfer, every lien, every modification on that property since 1971. Earl Archer, original owner, 1971. No subsequent transfers, no deed changes, no refinancing in anyone else's name. The house had passed from Earl to me in October of 2004, and in 20 years, nothing had moved it. My mother had lived in my house for 20 years. My mother had called it her house for 20 years. My mother had cooked Sunday dinners and hosted Christmas, and shown the upstairs bathroom to her friends and her book club and her new boyfriend, Randall Pruitt, and every single time she had done it in a house that belonged to her daughter. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I labeled it Birchwood. I began downloading documents. I did not call my mother. I did not call anyone. I sat with it for 40 minutes, the way you sit with something that rearranges everything you thought you understood. Not the grief kind of sitting, the accounting kind. The kind where you go back over the numbers because the total cannot be right, and then you check again, and it is right, and you just have to let the number be true. Then I picked up my phone and I called Wanda. Not because I needed comfort, because I needed someone to tell me I was not losing my mind. Wanda Briggs has worked at Morrison & Webb for 6 years. She is 40 years old, originally from Spartanburg, South Carolina, and she has an opinion about everything and the voice to match. She is the person you want next to you in a crisis, not because she stays calm, but because she does not pretend the crisis is not happening. Wanda looks a problem directly in the face and tells it exactly what she thinks of it. I walked to her desk. I did not say anything. I turned my monitor so she could see the screen. Wanda read. She scrolled. She read again. 4 seconds passed. Then 5. I counted them. She stood up from her chair, walked to the break room, came back with her coffee mug, sat back down, read one more time. "Baby," she said, "your mama's been living in your house for 20 years. Yeah. Rent-free? Yeah." Wanda set her mug down. She looked at the ceiling for a moment, the way people look at the ceiling when they are doing the math and do not like the answer. "Lord have mercy." She looked back at me. "What are you going to do?" "Finish the Harrington title search," I said. "Then call a real estate attorney." "That's it? That's all you got right now?" "And let it sit for a while." Wanda stared at me. "Girl," she said, which is the one word Wanda uses when she has approximately 40 things to say and has decided, against her nature, to say only one. I went back to my desk. I finished the Harrington search. I sent the file to the attorney upstairs. Then I opened the Birchwood folder and started reading everything from the beginning. Here is what I found, laid out in order the way I would lay out any case file. My grandfather Earl died on October 21st, 2004. He left a will. The will had been written 8 days before he died, drafted by an attorney named Harold Pruitt in High Point, North Carolina. Harold Pruitt is now retired. The will was filed with Guilford County Probate Court within 30 days of Earl's death, which is standard. The will left the property at 1147 Birchwood Drive to Simone Marie Archer, granddaughter, age 17, not to my father, Ray Archer, who was Earl's only son and who had been gone from our lives for 9 years at that point, not to my mother, Gloria Archer, who had lived in that house for 11 years at the time of Earl's death. To me, I did not know any of this. I was 17 years old. When Earl died, my mother sat me down and told me he had left everything to the family. That was the word she used, the family. She did not explain what that meant or what it included. I did not ask. I was 17, and I was grieving, and I believed her. 2 weeks after Earl's death, my mother filed for power of attorney over the property, citing my age and her role as my legal guardian. The POA was granted. It gave her authority to manage the property on my behalf until I reached the age of 21, or until I revoked it, whichever came first. I turned 21 in 1989. No, that is not right. I turned 21 in 2008. The POA expired in 2009. In 2009, no one filed anything. No deed transfer. No updated POA. No legal document of any kind. The property stayed in my name, exactly as Earl had left it. My mother continued living in the house. She continued calling it her house. She continued introducing it as her house to every person she has ever invited inside it. I sat at my desk reading case documents for 2.5 hours. Then I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling for a long time, the way Wanda had looked at it when she was doing the math. The math was this. My mother had been living in my property for 15 years past the point at which she had any legal authority to manage it on my behalf. She had no lease. She had no rental agreement. She had no written claim of any kind to that address. She was In the language I use every day at this desk, a tenant at will. I had a tenant at will living in my house who believed she owned it. I need to tell you about Earl's basement. Every house has a room that belongs to the person who built it, not because of the deed or the title or the chain of ownership, because of what happens there, what gets made there, what that person puts into the walls and the shelves and the particular way the light comes through the window in the afternoon. Earl's room was the basement. He kept a workbench down there, a long one, solid oak, 4 inches thick across the top, the kind of surface that does not move no matter what you put on it. Above it, on the wall, he had hung every tool he owned on a separate hook, each hook fitted to the shape of that specific tool, so that when you looked at the wall, you saw the outline of hammers and chisels and a brace and bit and a handplane arranged like a family portrait of objects that had done good work. I was 10 years old when he first let me stand next to him while he worked. He was building a chair that day. He set a piece of wood in front of me and put a small plane in my hands. "Try it," he said. I tried it. The wood moved wrong. My arms went wrong. I pushed too hard and the plane skidded off the corner. Earl watched. He did not take the tool from me. He adjusted my hands instead, repositioned my feet, showed me where to put my weight. I tried again. The shaving came off clean. He looked at my hands for a moment. Then he said, "You've got steady hands, girl, like me." He went back to his work. I went back to mine. I think about that a lot. I do not think about it the way people think about warm memories. I think about it the way you think about a piece of evidence you filed somewhere and now need to find again. Earl knew something when he wrote that will. He had one son who had walked away and a daughter-in-law he did not trust with anything that mattered, and a granddaughter who had steady hands. He made his choice. He just never told me he had made it. My first instinct after I had read the deed 3 times and the probate record twice and the expired POA once was to call my mother. I had my phone in my hand, her name in my contacts, my thumb above the call button. I put the phone down. Wanda appeared at my desk with 2 cups of coffee. She set one in front of me and sat in the spare chair with the other. She had been waiting for me to reach this point. Wanda is good at knowing when to wait. "You thinking about calling her," she said. It was not a question. I was. "Don't. I know. You need an attorney first. Your own attorney, not one from here. Real estate? Somebody who does residential property disputes." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "You need to know what you're holding before you walk into that conversation. Right now you've got a deed and a lapsed POA. That's enough to stand on. But you need somebody to tell you exactly how far it holds." She was right. I knew she was right before she said it. I had known it the moment I put the phone down. I called Peg Morrison the next morning. 3 months later, I still had not called my mother. I told myself it was because I was building the case, because I was being thorough, because a good paralegal does not move until the file is complete. But Wanda had asked me, once, very quietly, why I was really waiting, and I had not been able to answer her. Not honestly. Not yet. What I know now, looking back, is this. I was waiting because some part of me still believed that if I gave her enough time, she would do something that would make this easier. Say something. Volunteer something. Call me and say, "Simone, there is something I need to tell you about Earl's will. Something I should have told you a long time ago." She did not call. She never called. What she did was invite me to a dinner. Peg Morrison has been practicing real estate law in Greensboro for 31 years. She is 62 years old. She has a corner office on the 4th floor of a building on Elm Street. And in that office there is a ficus tree that has been dying for so long that it has become a kind of institution. Nobody waters it. Nobody throws it away. Peg says it reminds her that some things persist out of sheer stubbornness, which is a quality she admires. She read everything I brought her in about 12 minutes. The deed, the probate record, the power of attorney filing, and its expiration date. The chain of ownership going back to 1971. I had organized it the way I organize case files at work, chronologically, tabbed, with a 1-page summary at the front. Peg set the summary down. She looked at me over her reading glasses. Simone, she said, you own this house. You have owned it since you were 17 years old. Your mother has been living there as a tenant at will. No lease, no rental agreement, no legal claim of any kind. She paused for a moment. Technically, she owes you 20 years of back rent. I did not say anything. I am joking about the rent, Peg said, but not about the ownership. She turned to her computer and pulled up Guilford County records directly, running the same search I had run, checking it herself the way good attorneys check everything themselves. The same deed came up, the same name. She read it, clicked back, read it again. The power of attorney expired in 2009, she said. After that, your mother had no legal authority to act on behalf of the property. Not to manage it, not to refinance it, not to add anyone to it, not to transfer it. She looked at me. Is she planning to do any of those things? I think she might be adding someone to the deed, I said. Her boyfriend. They have been together about 8 months. Peg took off her reading glasses. She held them in her hand for a moment. Then we need to move, she said. I can prepare a cease and desist. It goes out under my letterhead. It names the property. It makes clear that any attempt to modify the title on a property she does not own is legally actionable. She paused. It will also make this real. For both of you. I know, I said. Do you want to give her a chance to respond privately first? Before any legal documents? I had thought about this. I had thought about very little else for 3 months. No, I said. I tried waiting. It did not help. Peg nodded. She made a note on her legal pad. I will have something ready by the end of next week. I thanked her. I gathered my file. I walked out through the lobby and into the parking garage and got into my car and sat there without starting it for a very long time. I had expected to feel something different. I had built a case. I had documentation. I had an attorney who had looked at everything and confirmed, without hesitation, that I was right, that Earl had left me the house, that the house was mine, that my mother had been living in it for 20 years under a legal arrangement that had expired in the second year of the Obama administration. I sat in the parking garage and I did not feel like I had won anything. The grief that came was not the sharp kind. It was not the kind that arrives in a wave and passes. It was the round, soft kind that settles into the body without announcing itself, the kind you do not notice until you try to take a full breath and find that something has already moved in and is taking up the space. I was right. I had always been right. Earl had known I was right when he signed the deed. And none of that changed the fact that I was sitting in a parking garage in Greensboro crying into the steering wheel of a 12-year-old Subaru because the truth had finally stopped being a theory and become a fact. The truth, once it becomes a fact, is permanent. You cannot unknow it. There is a smell that goes with the memory I am about to tell you. It is the smell of a school cafeteria in March, that particular combination of industrial cleaner and fruit punch and the heat from the serving trays, the smell that means the last stretch of the school year when everything still feels possible, and you are not yet old enough to know that possible is not the same as certain. I was 16 years old. I had just been named a full scholarship recipient to Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. Pre-law track. Full tuition, room and board, 4 years. I had applied in November and told no one. I had received the acceptance letter in February and told no one. I carried it in my backpack for 3 weeks before I brought it home. I put it on the kitchen table after dinner. My mother read it while I stood by the sink. I watched her face the way you watch someone's face when you have handed them something fragile and are not sure whether they understand what they are holding. She read it once, then she set it down on the table and smoothed it with her hand, gently, as if she were putting something away. Boone is 4 hours from here, she said. I know, Simone. She looked up at me. Her voice was not angry. It was the other thing, the thing that was harder to argue with. It is just the two of us. It has always been just the two of us. I looked at the acceptance letter on the table. I looked at my mother's hand still resting on it. I am not saying you cannot go, she said. I am just saying, you know what this house is without you here. I called Appalachian State the next morning. I withdrew my enrollment before the deadline. I told the admissions office there had been a change in my family situation. The woman on the phone was kind about it. She said I could reapply the following year. I never reapplied. I have not thought about that phone call in a very long time. I did not let myself think about it. There is a particular kind of decision that you can only survive by not looking at it directly, the way you cannot look at certain kinds of light. Sitting in Peg's parking garage, I looked at it directly. The question Wanda asked me once, very quietly, was this: why was I really waiting? I had told her I was building the case, being thorough, giving myself time to understand what I was holding before I walked into the conversation. All of that was true. But underneath the true things was this: I was waiting because I still believed, in some part of myself I had not yet dismantled, that if I gave her enough time, my mother would surprise me, that she would call one Sunday and say, "Simone, there is something I have been meaning to tell you. Something about Earl's will. Something I should have told you a long time ago." She did not call. What she did instead was call me on a Thursday evening, the same way she always called. My name first, then a pause, the way she says my name when she has already decided what the conversation is going to be. "Come to dinner Sunday," she said. "Special announcement. Everyone is coming. Bring something." I told her I would bring peach cobbler. I hung up and sent Peg a text message. "We need to be ready before Sunday." Peg replied 4 minutes later, "I will have everything drafted by Friday afternoon." I put my phone down on my kitchen counter and stood in my apartment for a moment in the quiet. The refrigerator hummed. The evening light came through the window at the angle it always comes at this time of year. I had spent 3 months waiting for my mother to be someone she was not. On Sunday, I was going to stop waiting. I had driven to Birchwood Drive hundreds of times in my life. I knew every turn by the way the road felt under the tires, every landmark by its place in a sequence I had stopped seeing years ago. The gas station on the corner of Summit, the church with the marquee sign that had been missing the letter B for as long as I could remember. The row of Bradford pear trees along the last stretch before the turn that bloomed white every spring and smelled, according to Wanda, like something had gone wrong in the kitchen. This Sunday was the first time I sat in my car after I turned onto Birchwood Drive and looked at the house before I got out. I do not mean looked at it the way you look at something familiar. I mean looked at it the way I look at a property record. Structurally, systematically, starting at the roofline and working down. The roof needed attention on the north side. Not urgently, but within a few years. The gutters on the east had pulled loose from the fascia at one corner. The front porch, the one Earl built himself, was solid. The boards had not shifted. The foundation plantings were overgrown but healthy. The oak tree Earl had put in the ground in 1975 was enormous now, 3 stories tall, wide enough that 2 people could not reach around it. It had survived every storm that had come through Greensboro for 50 years. The house was mine. I had known this intellectually since September. I was understanding it now in a different way. The way you understand something when you are looking at it and not just thinking about it. A man came around the side of the house with a pry bar. He was about 55, solidly built, wearing work clothes that had been washed many times. He was replacing a board on the fence along the side yard. He worked efficiently and without looking up, the way people work when they know what they are doing. He noticed me still sitting in my car and raised a hand in a neighborly way. I got out. We were close enough to speak. "Randall Pruitt," he said. "Simone Archer." He nodded the way men who work with their hands nod, a single acknowledgement without ceremony. He looked at the house for a moment, the way I had just been looking at it, and then he said, "That's a good foundation." Earl knew what he was doing. "He did," I said. Randall went back to the fence board. I went inside. My mother had cooked enough food for 20 people. This is not unusual. Gloria Archer cooks the way she does most things, at a scale that ensures no one can say she did not try. The dining room table had 2 extra leaves in it. The good tablecloth was out, the cream one she saves for occasions she considers significant. There were 14 of us by the time everyone arrived. Aunts and cousins, a neighbor from down the street who goes to Gloria's church. A woman I did not recognize who turned out to be someone from my mother's book club. Randall had come in from outside and cleaned up, and was sitting at the far end of the table, talking quietly to my cousin Terrence about something involving a pickup truck. I helped carry dishes from the kitchen. I refilled the sweet tea pitcher when it ran low. I did the things I have always done at these dinners, which is mostly to be useful in ways that do not require being at the center of anything. But I was watching. I had watched my mother in this house my whole life without registering what I was watching. This Sunday I registered everything. The way she put her hand flat on the kitchen counter when she was talking. The way a person touches something they are certain is theirs. The way she gave Randall a tour of the house that I could hear from the kitchen, room by room. This is the dining room. I refinished these floors myself. This is the back bedroom. I put in new windows 3 years ago. She had not refinished the floors herself. She had hired someone. I had transferred her the money. The photographs on the dining room wall were all Gloria. Gloria at church events. Gloria at a cookout. Gloria and Randall at what appeared to be the botanical gardens, a school photo of me at around age 10 that I had not seen in years, and that made me look like I was concentrating very hard on not blinking. And in the far corner of the room, behind a floor lamp that angled slightly in front of it, a framed photograph of Earl. It was the only one in the house. He was standing in front of a workbench, which I knew was the workbench in the basement, his arms at his sides and his expression the one he always had in photographs, not unfriendly, but not performing anything either, simply present. No one had moved his photo to a better spot in 20 years. I went to stand in the kitchen doorway while the plates were being passed. That was when I heard my mother on her phone in the hallway. She had stepped away from the table, just around the corner. She was speaking quietly, but the house is not large and I was close. "Yes," she said. "Randall is going to move in. I am going to put his name on it too. Make it official. What is mine should be his." She came back into the dining room a moment later with the expression she uses when she considers a matter settled. I excused myself to use the restroom. I sat on the edge of the bathtub for 1 minute. Then I took out my phone and typed a message to Peg Morrison. She is planning to add him to the deed. We need to move now. I put my phone back in my pocket. I went back to the table. I ate my food and I answered questions when questions were addressed to me, and I watched the clock above the refrigerator in the kitchen count the minutes. When the peach cobbler came out, I stood up and said I needed to get going. My cousin Terrence looked up from his plate with genuine concern. "You heading out?" he said. "Cobbler's still warm." I looked at the cobbler. It was a good cobbler. I had made it myself. "Save me a piece," I said. I got my bag from the front closet. I said my goodbyes. I walked to my car. Peg called back 23 minutes later, just as I was merging onto the highway. "The cease and desist will be ready Thursday," she said. "Do not let her do anything with that property before then." I told her I would not. The next morning, before I had finished my first cup of coffee, my mother called. "Sunday dinner," she said. "Everyone is coming. Special announcement. Do not be late." I told her I would not be late. Then I called Peg and said, "We need everything ready before Sunday, not after." There was a brief pause on her end. The pause Peg makes when she is adding a line to her legal pad. "Done," she said. My mother had been cooking since Friday. I could tell by the volume of food and the particular kind of exhaustion she carries when she has been in a kitchen for 2 days, the way she moves when her back hurts, but she will not acknowledge it, because acknowledging it would require stopping. 2 kinds of pie on the counter. A pot of collard greens that had clearly been on the stove since morning. The ribs had been in the smoker overnight. The macaroni was the baked kind, with 3 cheeses, the kind she only makes for occasions she considers important enough to justify the effort. 14 people came. The aunts, my cousins, the neighbor from church, the woman from the book club. 2 people I recognized from the Bible study group my mother attends on Wednesday evenings. Randall's truck was parked at the curb, which meant he had not come with her, which meant he had been asked to arrive separately, which meant this had been planned carefully enough that the staging mattered. The table had both leaves in it. The cream tablecloth was out. My mother was wearing the dress she wore to my cousin's wedding 3 years ago, which is navy blue and has a small pearl button at the collar that she closes when the occasion is formal. I sat in my usual chair, toward the middle of the table, between my Aunt Celeste and a cousin whose name I will call Marcus for the purposes of this story. My bag was on the floor beside my chair. I had put it there deliberately, close enough that I could reach into it without standing up. The envelope from Peg's office was inside. It had been there since Thursday, when I had driven to Elm Street and signed everything Peg had prepared and carried it back to my car without opening it again. I did not need to open it. I knew what it said. The meal went the way my mother's meals always go. Food was passed. Compliments were offered. My Aunt Celeste asked Randall about his contracting work, and Randall answered in the careful, unhurried way he has, without volunteering more than was asked. Terence ate a quantity of macaroni that I will not estimate out of respect for the dead. Someone asked about my job, and I said it was good, and that was the end of the conversation. My mother moved through the meal like a woman with something in her pocket. Her attention kept returning to Randall, and when it did, there was a quality to it I recognized. It was the way she looks when she has made a decision and is waiting for the moment to announce it. The plates were mostly cleared before she tapped her fork against her water glass. The room quieted. She stood. She looked around the table at each of us, the way she does when she wants to make certain everyone is paying attention. My mother is very good at the pause before the statement. She has always understood that silence, used correctly, is a form of emphasis. Y'all know that I have always believed this house is about more than just a place to live, she said. It is about family. It is about who we are to each other, and what we carry forward. She looked at Randall. Randall Pruitt is a good man. He is steady, and he is kind, and he has shown me what it looks like when someone actually shows up. She smiled. I want him to be part of this family officially. And I want to start that by making this house his home too. I am going to put his name on the deed. There was a sound from around the table. Not quite applause. More like a collective exhale. The sound of a room deciding how to receive an announcement that is larger than expected. My Aunt Celeste pressed a hand to her chest. The woman from the book club said, "Oh, how wonderful." Someone started actually clapping. I did not clap. I sat with my hands in my lap. Randall was looking at my mother with the expression of someone who had been told about this in advance, but was still not entirely sure how he felt about it. He nodded. He reached over and covered her hand with his. Here is what I thought, sitting in that chair while the room around me made the sounds of celebration. I thought, this is the moment. Not Monday, not a phone call, not a letter from Peg. Right now, in front of every person in this family who is old enough to understand what is happening. I had the document. I had everything I needed. The only thing I had to do was reach down and take it out. And then the other thought came, the one that has been following me since I was 16 years old, the one that sounds like logic and functions like a cage. Do not be the one who breaks this. Not here. Not in front of everyone. You can call Peg Monday. You can send the cease and desist through the mail. You can give her a chance to respond privately, without an audience, without making this into a scene that everyone present will remember for the rest of their lives. You can do this the quiet way, the kind way, the way that does not make you the person who walked into your mother's dinner and put a legal document on the table in front of 14 people. I sat with that thought for the length of time it took my mother to finish thanking everyone for being there. And then she looked at me. She had been going around the table with her eyes, that same slow circuit she always makes when she is speaking to a room. And when she reached me, she paused, the way you pause on a step that is slightly lower than you expected. Simone, she said, you have never really been a contributing member of this household. The smile did not change. Once Randall is here, this is his home. You understand what that means. You do not just show up on Sundays anymore. You call first. You ask. She looked around the table, gathering the room the way she always does. I suppose this is your last meal here, the way things have been. But that is okay. You will always be welcome to visit. The word landed the way certain words land. Not loudly. Precisely. I heard Peg's voice from a Thursday afternoon in a parking garage that already felt like another year. 30 years is a long time to be a guest. The thought that had been keeping my hand still dissolved. It did not argue. It did not fight. It simply was no longer there. I reached into my bag. The room was still talking. Someone was saying something to Randall about the house. My Aunt Celeste was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Terrence had gone back to his macaroni. I took out the manila envelope. I set it on the table. I set it in the center, where everyone could see it, in the space between the water pitcher and the bread basket, with the same deliberateness that Earl used to set his tools down at the end of a day's work. Not carelessly, and not dramatically. Simply with the weight of something that means what it is. I looked at my mother. "That is from my attorney," I said. My mother picked up the envelope. She looked at it for a moment before she opened it, the way people look at something they do not want to touch but cannot put back down. Then she pulled out the documents. 2 pages, plus the attached deed copy. Peg's letterhead at the top of the first page. My name, and my mother's name, and the address of 1147 Birchwood Drive. And language that was precise and specific and left no room for interpretation. The room had gone quiet by the time Gloria reached the bottom of the first page. Not the polite quiet of a meal. The other kind. She read the second page. Then she looked at the deed copy, the one with Earl's signature, the one from October of 2004. She read it once. She read it again. A long moment passed. "What is this?" she said. She was not asking. She knew what it was. The question was the only thing standing between her and what came after. "That is a cease and desist," I said. "And a copy of the deed Earl filed the week before he died. The house has been in my name since I was 17 years old. The cease and desist means any attempt to modify the title on that property, add names to it, refinance it, or transfer any interest in it is legally actionable." My Aunt Celeste reached across the table and took the document from Gloria's hands. She read the first paragraph. Then she set it down very carefully. The way you set down something you did not realize was hot until you were already holding it. "The Guilford County property records are public," I said. "Anyone at this table can pull them up tonight." Nobody said anything for a moment. Then my cousin Marcus, who has a loud voice and uses it generously, said, "She cannot do this to her mother's house." "It is not her mother's house," I said. "It has never been her mother's house. It is mine." I looked at my mother, which means, "Mom, that this is your last meal here too. Not just mine." Then I looked at Randall. Randall was holding his hand out. He had done it quietly while Marcus was talking. He was asking for the document. I passed him the deed copy. He read it the way he does most things, without hurry, starting at the beginning, not skipping to the end. The room waited. He turned to the second page. He looked at Earl's signature. He looked at the date. He set the document down on the table in front of him. He turned to my mother. "You told me this was your house," he said. He was not accusatory. He was not loud. He said it the way someone states something they have just confirmed, the way you say the highway number when you have been checking the map and now you are certain. Gloria opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Randall stood up. He looked at me across the table, not warmly, not coldly, but directly, the way someone looks at you when they respect that you did something they might not have been able to do themselves. He nodded once. "I'm sorry," he said. Then he picked up his jacket from the back of his chair and walked to the front door and closed it behind him. The room was very still. Then Terrence looked up from his plate and looked around at the faces, and then looked down at his plate again and said, "So, is the dinner still happening?" The woman from the book club exhaled the laugh that comes out when something is both wrong and exactly right. Someone kicked Terrence under the table. He looked up with complete sincerity and said, "What?" "I am asking for myself." My mother turned to me. The expression she had been wearing since she opened the envelope, the one that had been cycling through something I could not name, settled into something I recognized. It was the expression she uses when she has decided that the best defense is to make the other person responsible for everything. "Earl would never want this," she said. Her voice had gone low and careful. Earl loved this family. He would never want his own granddaughter to use a piece of paper to destroy what he built. "Earl wrote the deed," I said. "You are doing this to hurt me." I am doing this because you are about to put a man's name on my grandfather's property. A man you have known for 8 months. This is my home." Her voice was rising now, and the room felt it, the way a room feels a change in pressure. 30 years I have lived in this house. 30 years I have kept it clean, and paid for things, and made it what it is. A piece of paper does not erase 30 years. It does not have to erase anything, I said. The deed does not say what you did or did not do in the house. It says who owns it. She turned to the room. She had always been better than me at working a room. It is one of the things she does instinctively, the way some people reach for their phones when they are uncomfortable. She looked at the aunts, at the cousins, at the neighbor from the church. "You see what she is doing," she said. "You see what kind of daughter does this." My Aunt Celeste did not say anything. She was looking at the table. My Aunt Phyllis, who is Celeste's younger sister and who has never in my memory been uncertain about anything, was looking at the deed copy that was still sitting in front of Randall's empty chair. The neighbor from church said, quietly but clearly, "Gloria, whose name is on the deed?" Gloria did not answer her. I stood up. I put the strap of my bag over my shoulder. "The cease and desist is effective immediately," I said. "That means no changes to the property, no names added, no agreements made with any third party regarding the title. Peg's office will be in touch about next steps." I looked at my mother. "You have time. I am not asking you to do anything tonight. But this needed to happen before you went any further." I said goodbye to the room. I was not sure if the room heard me. I walked to the front closet and got my jacket, and I walked out through the front door. The door Earl had hung himself, the one with the stained glass panel at the top that throws colored light into the entryway in the late afternoon. I pulled it shut behind me. I sat in my car on Birchwood Drive for a long time. The lights were on inside the house. I could see movement through the front window, shapes crossing back and forth, the dinner continuing or ending or transforming into something else. I could not tell which. I watched the colored light from the entryway panel glow against the porch ceiling. Earl had chosen that glass himself. He had told me once that he wanted people to know they were coming into somewhere that had been thought about. I had done what I came to do. It was over, or the beginning of over, which is its own complicated thing. I had expected relief, or anger, or the particular satisfaction that comes when you have been right about something for a very long time and finally someone else has to reckon with it. What came instead was quieter than any of those. It was something that did not have a clean name. Something that felt the way a room feels when all the furniture has been moved out and you are standing in the empty space, looking at the outlines on the floor where things used to be. I drove home. I did not call anyone. I sat on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets, and I stayed there until the light outside changed, which is what I do when something has happened that I need to let become real before I can start doing anything about it. It became real slowly, the way most true things do. My mother called 14 times in 3 days. I know this because my phone kept count. I did not listen to the voicemails. I read the names as they came in and set the phone back down each time. Gloria, Gloria, Aunt Celeste, Gloria. A number I did not recognize that turned out to be my Aunt Phyllis, calling from her landline, Gloria, Marcus, Gloria. The calls from the aunts were harder than the calls from my mother. My mother calling I had prepared for, the aunts I had not, or had not fully, which amounts to the same thing. My Aunt Celeste left a message that I did listen to. The second day, standing in my kitchen at 6 in the morning before work, she did not say I had done anything wrong. She said she was worried about my mother. She said she hoped I knew what I was doing. She said she was praying for both of us, which is the thing the women in my family say when they do not know what else to say, and which sounds like comfort and functions like an absence of answer. I went to work. I came home. I ate things I do not remember. On the third day, I drove past Birchwood Drive. I did not stop. I drove past at a speed that let me see the house without appearing to look at it, the way you glance at something you are not supposed to be watching. The lights were on. The Bradford pear tree at the edge of the property had bloomed while I was not paying attention, white and abundant and faintly wrong-smelling the way it always is in April. The porch light was on, the one Earl wired himself, which comes on at dusk on a sensor, and which my mother has never once changed the bulb in, because the bulb Earl put in when he wired it has simply never stopped working. I drove home without stopping. Peg called on a Wednesday. "Your mother has filed," she said. She said it the way she says everything, directly, without preface, as if I had asked the question she was now answering. Deed contest. She is claiming there was an oral agreement between her and Earl that the property would pass to her at his death. Does she have anything to support that? Nothing in writing. No witnesses I can find. No documentation of any kind. I heard her click something on her keyboard. She has no legal standing, Simone. But she can file an action and drag this out anywhere from 6 to 12 months. I stood at my kitchen window. The parking lot of my apartment complex was mostly empty at this hour. A man was walking a dog I had seen before but did not know the name of. The dog stopped at a crack in the pavement and examined it thoroughly. "File the response," I said. "And the motion for sanctions. If she wants to run a frivolous action, the court can decide what that costs her." "Done," Peg said. There was the sound of her writing something. "Are you all right?" "I am fine," I said, which was not entirely true, and which Peg, who has practiced law for 31 years and developed the ability to hear the space between words, did not appear to fully believe. She said she would be in touch. We hung up. I stood at the window until the man with the dog went back inside. Wanda came over on Friday evening. I had not asked her to. She appeared at my door with a container of something from the Haitian restaurant on Elm Street, and 2 plastic forks, and no particular explanation for her presence, which is the truest thing about Wanda. She does not explain herself when she has decided something is necessary. We sat on my kitchen floor because my table only has 2 chairs, and neither of us had felt like sitting at a table. I had pulled a box of old photographs from under my bed sometime in the previous week. I did not remember taking it out. It was just there, open, on the floor beside my couch. Wanda reached into the box while she was eating and pulled out a photograph. She looked at it for a moment. Then she held it out to me. I was 16 in the photograph. I was wearing a church dress on a weekday, which I had done because it felt like an occasion. I was holding a letter. I was smiling in the photograph in a way I almost did not recognize, the specific smile of a person who is in possession of something that feels, in that moment, exactly right. "Is this you at 16? Wanda asked. "Yes." "What are you holding?" "An acceptance letter. Appalachian State University. Full scholarship." Wanda looked at the photograph again. Then she looked at me. "You never told me you got a scholarship." I canceled it. She did not say anything right away. Wanda is capable of silence when she determines that silence is the correct tool. She held the photograph in both hands and looked at it for a long time, and then she set it down carefully on the floor between us. "Simone," she said, "do you think your mother actually could not be alone? Or do you think she needed you to stay because staying felt like something that was hers?" I looked at the photograph. The question did not crack anything open. It did not feel like a revelation. It felt like something I had always known being said out loud for the first time, the way certain things only become real when someone else names them. "I do not know," I said. Then, after a moment, "I think I know." We sat there for a while after that without talking much. Wanda finished her food. I did not finish mine. At some point she said she had to get home, and I walked her to the door, and she hugged me the way Wanda hugs people, firmly and without ceremony, and then she left. I went back to the kitchen floor. I picked up the photograph of myself at 16 and looked at it for a long time. Here is what I understood. Sitting on my kitchen floor on a Friday evening in April, looking at the face of a girl who was about to cancel a scholarship she had earned. The house was not the beginning of the story. The house was just the most recent thing. It was the scholarship. It was 20 years of Sunday dinners where I drove 40 minutes and helped and left feeling like a visitor in a place I had given up a future to stay near. It was every time I transferred money without being asked if I could afford it, and every time I drove 40 minutes because she called, And every time I sat at that dining room table and waited for the version of my mother's smile that she saves for other people, the house was just the thing Earl had the foresight to put in writing. There was a text on my phone when I came back from walking Wanda out. A number I did not have saved. Memphis area code. It said, "Heard about the house. Earl always said you'd figure it out." And then a dash and a name. Ray. I had not heard from my father in 11 years. He had nothing to say about the house when Earl was alive and keeping it. He had less to say now. I put the phone face down on the counter. I did not reply. I have not replied. I called my mother on Sunday morning. She answered on the second ring, which told me she had been waiting for me to call, which told me she had things prepared. I did not give her time to begin. "I am not calling to apologize," I said. "I am calling because you deserve to know what comes next." What came next was this. She had 6 months to find somewhere else to live. I was not going to charge her back rent. I was not going to pursue the civil claims Peg had mentioned as a possibility. I was going to help her move if she wanted help. I was going to give her 6 months, which was more than the law required. There was silence on her end. Then, "You are doing this to hurt me." I had known she would say this. I had known it the way you know the weather when you have lived somewhere long enough. It was not a response to what I had said. It was the only sentence she had available for situations where she could not control the outcome. "No," I said. "I am doing this because it is true. And I am done pretending it is not." She did not say anything else. I waited long enough to be certain she had finished, and then I said goodbye, and I hung up. I stood in my apartment in the Sunday morning quiet, and I thought about Earl putting a glass panel in a door, so that people would know they were coming into somewhere that had been thought about. I was going to live in that house. For the first time in my life, I was not going to ask permission. 6 months later, I helped my mother move. She had found an apartment in the north part of the city, 2 bedrooms, first floor, a small covered patio that faced a parking lot. I carried boxes. I wrapped dishes in newspaper. I moved a lamp that was heavier than it looked and set it in the corner of her new living room where it appeared to belong. We did not talk much. We have never been the kind of people who talk while we work. We worked. At the end of the afternoon, when the truck was nearly empty and the rooms at Birchwood Drive were bare, except for the things that had always been there, the things that were Earl's, my mother sat down on the front porch steps. I sat beside her. The oak tree was in full leaf. The neighborhood was quiet the way it gets on summer afternoons, that particular heat-muffled stillness. We sat there for a while without either of us starting a conversation, which is the most honest thing we have done together in a long time. "Earl always liked you better," she said. "He trusted me," I said. "There is a difference." She looked at the porch boards. Earl's boards, fitted and sanded and painted twice over 50 years. He built this with his hands, you know. "I know." Another quiet. A car passed on the street. Somewhere down the block, a dog said something brief and definitive. "Are you going to live here?" she asked. "Yes." "You will take care of it?" "Yes." She nodded. She sat for another minute. Then she stood up and went inside for the last 2 boxes. I stayed on the porch until the truck pulled away. I watched it until it turned the corner at the end of Birchwood Drive and disappeared. 3 months after the moving day, the court dismissed my mother's deed contest and ordered her to pay $9,400 in attorney fees. Peg told me on a Tuesday afternoon, the same way she tells me everything. I thanked her. I hung up. I thought about calling my mother. I did not. I walked through the house alone for the first time that evening. Each room was itself again. The floors, the windows, the particular way sound moves through a space when it is not full of someone else's furniture. The dining room, the hallway, the room at the back with the window that faces the yard. I walked all of it without rushing. I had brought one photograph with me. I hung it in the center of the living room wall. Earl, standing in front of his workbench, arms at his sides, not performing anything. Then I went down to the basement. The workbench was exactly where it had always been. The tools still hung on their hooks in the shapes Earl had fitted them to, each one in its place, organized with the patience of someone who understood that good things last when they are properly kept. I touched the handplane. The handle was smooth from decades of use, the wood worn to the shape of a grip that was not mine but that my hand understood anyway. I sat down on the basement floor beside the workbench. I stayed there for a while, not because I was lost, because I had arrived somewhere and I needed to let it be real. Then I went back upstairs. I sat on the front porch with my phone. I found the number for Appalachian State University graduate admissions. I called. A woman answered and I told her I was interested in information about the pre-law graduate track. She asked me my name and I told her. She asked how she could help and I said I was not sure yet. I was just starting to ask. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The deed said I had owned that house since I was 17 years old, but I did not own it until the day I walked through every room alone and stopped apologizing for being there. Earl did not give me a house. He gave me permission. The rest, I had to give myself. Is there something that was given to you, or that has always been yours, that you have been standing outside of, waiting to be invited in? What would it look like to simply walk through the door? There is a difference between what belongs to you and what you have been allowed to claim. Sometimes the two things look so different that you spend years standing in front of a door that was never locked, waiting for someone to hand you the key. Simone's grandfather put her name on that deed because he understood something she would spend 20 years learning, that the people who love you well do not make themselves the permission you need. They hand you the thing and trust you to know what to do with it. If you have been waiting for someone's approval before you take up space in your own life, this is worth asking yourself honestly. Is that permission ever actually coming? Or have you been the one holding the key all along, calling the wait something more comfortable, like patience, or loyalty, or love? What is one thing in your life that has always been yours, that you have not yet let yourself fully